There's quite a bit of research going on about remote healing and prayer. Elizabeth Card, who's up in, I think, in the Berkeley area, has been showing, remarkable results and very significant statistically, that people actually, by intention, can help someone get better, even if they don't know the person's name, if they're just chosen randomly, and even if they don't know where that person is. Remote viewing, there's been a lot of experiments in the Bay Area, I think even starting back in the 70s on this. At SRI, the CIA has done this, and I know there's been some military experiments, where they take volunteers, they blindfold them, and ask them to see certain things, to go certain places or times, and to report what they see. And they're actually very good correlations. And you can practice that on the Boundary Institute site also. Uri Geller, I've seen some of the results of what he did. He would be handed an envelope that would have a picture inside it. And he couldn't see the picture. It was sealed, and he would draw what he thought was in there. And I've seen the pictures are almost identical in many cases. I also talked with someone here at the forum about last week. I don't know if he's here today, but he was telling me that he knew someone who went driving with Uri Geller, and Uri had a blindfold on. So, I mean, these are wild things. Okay, then there's the DNA phantom experiment. My friend Vladimir Poponin, who lives in San Francisco, is a physicist. He's in the Russian Academy of Sciences. He did this experiment in Russia and also duplicated it at Stanford, where he's shown a laser. It's some sort of laser interference spectrometer. And he got to see what it was just going through air. And then he stuck a sample of DNA in solution inside there. And then he removed the DNA. And the air was different, or the space was different. Anyway, the spectrum was different. And this effect persisted for months. Cleve Baxter, who I've met, he's in San Diego. He started doing plant electrophysiology back in the 80s, because he teaches people how to use lie detectors. So he hooked it up to a plant, and he found the plant responded to his emotions. It responded to emotional events in people's lives, even to his thoughts. If he thought about hurting the plant would react. And he also went on, this is personal communication, he's done this with yogurt, he's done it with human cells, and he's even done it with water. Jacques Benveniste, he is known for his controversial talk about homeopathy and ultra-dilutions in Nature a few years back. But these days, he's digitally recording some sort of information signature of drugs and then storing them digitally on a computer. This is through a sound card. And then playing them back through some sort of transducer into water, and that water takes on the properties of that drug or that substance and will actually have a biological effect. Then there's David Resnick, he's at ResTech, which is a company in Mountain View. And he's done some experiments where he thinks that he's shown that hydrogen gas is carrying information. A similar kind of experiment where it will affect cells or different reactions. And homeopathy, that's been around for, I think, at least 200 years. This is a standard way of making, imprinting substances or imprinting information into substances. That's my interpretation, where you take a substance, dilute it, shake it, dilute it, shake it, dilute it, shake it, dilute it, shake it. And you can dilute it until there's not a molecule left of that substance, but it will have an effect. Now, it turns out that the effect is the opposite of what the substance originally would do. But, there are many, many doctors, especially in Europe, who do this, and there are many in the U.S. as well. Now, what most people don't realize is that you can actually take a box that's imprinted with intention to produce this information in a substance, and that will work too. Okay, dowsing and muscle testing. We're taught that the body is this amazing machine, but it's dumb. I mean, that's at the medical school. That's the way they teach it. That all we know is what we know from tests and from asking the patient questions and what we observe. But the body is really actually very intelligent. I've seen this many, many times, where you can do muscle testing and you can get information from the body. I did some muscle testing with a friend of mine. I knew I was developing some food allergies, and we went down the list of food allergies, and my muscle was strong, weak, strong, weak. Strong meaning that I guess it's good for me, weak meaning that I'm allergic to it. And by golly, we came up with a list, and it made sense. Well, I went to and this is without me looking at the list. In fact, I've seen this done just with the name of the substance on a piece of paper crumpled up and blindly held against your chest. So I actually my grandmother took pity on me and sent me to an allergist, and the allergist did these pinprick tests for $350 or something, and by golly, it was the same list. So anyway, I'd like to demonstrate a very simple way to dowse or do muscle testing yourself so that you can have your own personal window into the vid and do your own experiments. What you do is you take your thumb and ring finger, hold them together, and then try to break that apart. Now, if the muscles are weak, your finger will go through. If they're strong, it'll be hard for it to go through. And you need to approach it in sort of an open, kind of humble way. So you don't know, you're clearing your mind, so it's not preconceived. And then you go, okay, I'm thinking of tobacco. Is it good for me? No. I'm thinking of whole wheat bread. Is it good for me? Yes. Okay, well, each of those is a bit of information. Now, you can start practicing with your own body. Then you can start practicing with someone else's body, even if they're not there, or your dog. And then you can start asking questions, well, what about something on the other side of the world, or something on another planet? And if you just think about it, if you took enough of these bits, you could assemble an image, for instance. It's digital. Or maybe it's an illusion. I don't know. But I use it all the time. Okay, radionics. This is a way to take a box that might even look like a computer. It can have knobs and dials, or it can have a little PC built in. It's a device for gathering Vidic information and for delivering it. Intention is very important. I mean, you have to say what it is you want to know and what it is you want it to do. And you can say that by turning knobs. I mean, there are many, many different kinds of these things. You can read up on radionics. But it can also be automated. One of the ways of getting information is to use a rub plate, where you rub your fingers back and forth, and when it sticks, it feels like it sticks. That's the answer, whatever the knob is, is pointing at. The basics of radionics, and it's the same as for divination systems like the I Ching, is that you have a physical system. You decide in advance what the language of that system is going to be, or you ask it what the language is going to be. And then, with your intention, you ask a question or you ask it to do something, and the universe seems to respond. Then there are my friends Gary Schwartz and Linda Russick. They're at the University of Arizona. They have what they call the Human Bioenergy Fields Laboratory. They have found that if you have two people and they're even 20 feet, 40 feet apart, you can actually, and if they're close to each other, they have sympathy between each other. They're in love or whatever. You can find the heartbeat of one person in the brain waves of the other person if you do signal averaging. It's there. These days, they're going even more off the deep end. They're communicating with disembodied beings through mediums. And, I don't know. I've stayed away from that. But, we all have our limits. That's something I don't want to mess with. But another experiment that Gary did was he found that there was a significant difference between. He took people who didn't know any Hebrew, and he showed them three-letter combinations, some that were real Hebrew and others that were just make-up words, three-letter words. And in the people who knew no Hebrew, there was actually a discernible difference, highly statistically significant, between their response to one or the other, which indicates that, maybe there is sort of a memory in the universe, and that an ancient language may have built up sort of an information kind of field. Okay, now we get into behavior. There are instincts. I don't know if you've ever seen dogs of a certain breed, but they'll always do the same thing in the same situation. Where does that come from? Then there's intelligence of ants, termites, bees, bird flocks, fish schools. I mean, yes, there's some mechanistic explanations for those, but I don't think they go far enough. Now, if you really want to have a direct experience, just go to a stop sign, or if there's a storm and the stoplights aren't working. Notice how there's almost like a telepathic link between the people so the cars get through. And then if you really want to see something really miraculous and totally unexplainable by physical laws, go to India and watch traffic there. It's outrageous. It's just unbelievable. And then also in mob dynamics, there's sort of a consciousness that happens. I mean, you've probably been there, football games. Okay, more in psychology, and I'm just going to zip through this, that there are shamanic visions where shaman, they gather information, they influence things, they empower intent, they relate with animals, all just by going within themselves. There are near-death experiences that people talk about. I think thought, consciousness, intention, intuition, creativity, that these are all Vidic phenomena. The experience we have in bonding and sympathy and empathy, I mean, you have that experience of sort of knowing what that person you're really close with, what they're thinking. I mean, I'm sure everyone's had experiences like that, where you both call each other at the same time, or you know, that sort of coincidence. More charisma. I think that's a Vidic phenomenon, maybe. That there's some people, they just walk in the room, and you may not even be looking there, but the room changes. There's telepathy. This is a real quick story. My sister called up my mother and said, "Mom, I'm not coming for dinner tonight." And my mother said, "That's okay. I know you're running off to Las Vegas to get married. Go have a nice time." And she didn't know. That happened to me too once. I just looked at this woman and said, "You went to Smith, didn't you?" And she did. So, and then there's clairaudience. There's psychokinesis, like the random number generators. And, you know, people have done all sorts of other things. I don't know if spoon bending applies. Music and art appreciation. I mean, when you're listening to music and appreciating it, don't you sort of go off into another sort of space? I don't think that's all just neurons firing. In fact, you know, there are these people who come up with inventions simultaneously. I've done this. Other people have done it. Usually I come up with it about 10 years before the other people. I find that my own inner experiences, I go into like an inner laboratory, and the stuff is already there. It's built, you know, and I just build it. And then there are all these stories about identical twins separated by birth, separated at birth, who years later they discover each other and they're wearing the same color clothes, same style. They're married to a woman with the same name. They have the same kind of job, you know, all these wild things. Here are the idiots savants, or idiot savants, who you can ask them a complicated mathematical equation, you know, what is pi? And they'll give it to you hundreds of decimal places. Where does that come from? I think they're tapping into something else besides neurons firing. Multiple personality disorders, where each personality has totally different physiology, totally different personality. There's love bonding, there's hypnosis, cultural memes, linguistics and language learning. I think there's a Vidic component to that as well. You know, I'll bet you could do an experiment, and it would be easier to learn a known language than a synthetic language that had similar structure. Jungian archetypes in the collective unconscious. Where does that come from? You know, why do we all, when we dream, have the same archetypes show up? You know, it's probably not from all reading the same myths or the same stories. And then synchronicity, the way things just sort of happen, coincidences, and more. Okay, now we get into the fun part, the Vidic technologies beyond imagination. This is just an idea that maybe a lot of the things we have, they'll look just like what we already have. But there'll be a little difference. There'll be this vid port built in. So it would be this computer, and it wouldn't have no network connection, but it would be able to tune into the whole world. By putting your hand on, maybe that would be a way for it to tune into you and say, oh, okay, yeah, now you want this. Okay, now you want that. And it'll respond to your intention. So information technology, I think that our computers and the internet are only crude prototypes of what the Vidic information technology would look like, and maybe will. Unlimited bandwidth, memory, computing power, networking. Cyberspace just got a lot bigger and friendlier.